The wind whispered secrets through the towering pines as we made our way to the secluded beach, nestled at the edge of the world. It was a family tradition, one that had been passed down for generations. Every summer we would pack our bags, load up the car, and escape to this hidden paradise. But this year things were different. This year something was off. As we arrived at the beach, the sun was already beginning its descent, casting long shadows over the shoreline. The waves crashed rhythmically against the rocks, a soothing lullaby that usually filled me with peace. But tonight, that peace was elusive. The air was thick with a strange tension, like the calm before a storm. My younger sister Emily tugged at my sleeve, her eyes wide with excitement. "Let's build a sandcastle, Mark," she exclaimed, her voice echoing against the vast emptiness of the beach. I forced a smile and nodded, my unease growing with every step we took. As I helped Emily shape the sand into turrets and walls, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was nothing there. Just the endless expanse of sand and sea. "Dinner's ready," Mom's cheerful voice carried over the wind, breaking the spell that had settled over me. We abandoned our half-finished sandcastle and joined the family around the picnic table. The aroma of grilled burgers filled the air, momentarily distracting us from the unease that had settled in our hearts. As we ate, the sun dipped lower on the horizon, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance in the fading light. The wind picked up, carrying with it a mournful howl that sent shivers down my spine. I exchanged a glance with my dad, and for a moment, I saw the same apprehension reflected in his eyes. After dinner, we gathered around the bonfire, the flames casting flickering shadows on the sand. My mom began telling one of her beloved ghost stories, a tale of a vengeful spirit that haunted the beach after sunset. I chuckled along with the rest of the family, trying to shake off the growing unease that had settled over me. But then, as if on cue, the flames of the bonfire flickered and dimmed. The wind seemed to carry whispers that I couldn't quite decipher, as if it were trying to tell me something. My heart raced, and I stole a glance at my dad. He was staring into the distance, his face pale. "All right, that's enough spooky stories for one night," Dad said, his voice sounding strained. "Let's pack up and head back to the cabin." I felt a mixture of relief and disappointment as we extinguished the bonfire and began gathering our belongings. Emily yawned and rubbed her eyes, her energy drained from a day of sun and play. We started the short walk back to the cabin, the moon now high in the sky casting an eerie glow on the beach. As we walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was following us, lurking just beyond the edge of the darkness. I quickened my pace, my heart pounding in my chest. The wind continued to carry those strange whispers, and I was certain I heard my name being called in a hushed, almost desperate tone. "Mark." I turned around, my breath catching in my throat. There was nothing there, just the empty beach, the waves crashing, and the shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. "Mark." This time, the voice was clearer, closer. It was coming from the water, the waves now lapping at the shore in an irregular rhythm. I took a step back, my fear overwhelming my curiosity. My family had stopped walking and were staring at me, concern etched on their faces. "Mark, come to me." The voice was urgent now, almost pleading. I took another step back, my heart pounding. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible even to myself. "Mark, please." My feet were moving of their own accord, carrying me toward the water. I felt a hand on my shoulder and I jumped, turning to see my dad's worried face. "Mark, what's wrong?" he asked, his grip firm on my arm. I don't know," I stammered, tearing my gaze away from the water. The voice was gone, replaced by the crashing of the waves and the sound of my own ragged breath. "Let's go back to the cabin," Dad said gently, leading me away from the shoreline. As we walked away from the beach, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The waves seemed to be reaching out as if longing to touch my feet once more, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a figure standing in the water, its features obscured by darkness. We returned to the cabin, the unease still lingering in the air. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something that wanted me to stay, to join it in the depths of the ocean. As I lay in bed that night, the sound of the waves echoed in my ears. I closed my eyes, trying to shake off the fear that had taken hold of me. But even as I drifted into sleep, I couldn't escape the haunting whispers that seemed to echo in the depths of my mind. "Mark, come back to me." And in my dreams I walked into the water, drawn by a force I couldn't resist, the voice growing louder and more desperate with each step. I woke up with a start, my heart racing, my bedsheets damp with sweat. The morning light filtered through the curtains, and for a brief moment I felt a sense of relief as the events of the previous night seemed like a distant nightmare. But as I sat up and glanced out the window, the beach stretched before me, its waves crashing against the shore with an almost hypnotic rhythm. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had attached itself to me, something that wanted me to return to the water. I tried to shake off my unease as I joined my family for breakfast, but the tension in the air was palpable. No one spoke of what had happened the previous night, but the haunted looks exchanged between us said it all. "We're going to explore the tide pools today," Mom announced, trying to inject some normalcy into the situation. We all forced smiles and nodded in agreement, though the undercurrent of fear still lingered. As we reached the tide pools, the ocean stretched out before us, the water a shimmering blue that belied the horror that lurked beneath its surface. We carefully navigated the rocks and peered into the shallow pools, marveling at the small marine creatures that called this place home. But even in the daylight, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. "Dad, look at this crab!" Emily exclaimed, her excitement momentarily overshadowing the unease. I smiled and joined her, kneeling beside the tide pool. As I watched the crab scuttle across the rocks, I caught a glimpse of movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned my head, my heart skipping a beat. Standing at the edge of the water was a figure, partially obscured by the mist that clung to the shoreline. I blinked, thinking it was a trick of the light, but when I looked again, the figure was still there. It was a woman, her dress billowing in the wind, her hair wild and tangled. Her eyes were dark voids, and she beckoned to me with a skeletal hand. "Mark." Her voice was a mere whisper carried by the breeze. I stumbled back, my heart pounding, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My family turned to me, concern etched on their faces. "Mark, are you okay?" Mom asked. I tore my gaze away from the shoreline and nodded, unable to find my voice. The woman was gone, as if she had never been there. But the feeling of her presence still lingered, a cold weight settling in the pit of my stomach. "We should head back," Dad suggested, his eyes filled with worry. I nodded again, unable to shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. As we made our way back to the cabin, I stole glances at the ocean, half expecting to see the woman again. But the beach was empty, the waves crashing against the shore as if nothing had happened. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I tried to distract myself with books and games, anything to keep my mind off the events of the past few days. But as night fell once again, the unease returned with a vengeance. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the sound of the waves echoing in my ears. I knew I had to face whatever was haunting me, to confront the woman who had called out to me from the depths of the ocean. With a deep breath, I got out of bed and made my way to the beach. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow on the water. The waves whispered against the sand as if they were trying to guide me. I walked to the water's edge, my heart pounding in my chest. "Mark." The voice was clearer now, closer. I looked out into the ocean, and there she was, standing on the water's surface, her eyes fixed on mine. "Who are you?" I called out, my voice trembling. She smiled, a sad and haunting smile. "I was lost at sea, Mark. I've been waiting for someone to hear my cries to set me free. What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Help me find peace," she pleaded. "Release me from this eternal torment." I took a step closer to the water, the waves licking at my feet. "How can I help you? Say my name," she said, her voice like a gust of wind. I hesitated, fear and uncertainty warring within me. But then, I took a deep breath and spoke the name that had haunted my thoughts and dreams. Amara. As soon as the name left my lips, a gust of wind enveloped me, and the world around me seemed to shift. The beach faded away, replaced by a swirling vortex of water and mist. I felt weightless, suspended in a realm between the living and the dead. Amara stood before me, her form shifting and changing like water. "Thank you, Mark. You've given me release." The vortex around us began to calm, and the beach materialized once again. But this time Amara stood beside me, her presence no longer one of longing and desperation, but of gratitude and peace. "Go now, Mark. Live your life," she said, her voice echoing in the wind. As the first light of dawn painted the sky with hues of pink and gold, Amara's form dissipated, merging with the sea. I stood there for a moment, the weight that had haunted me finally lifted. The waves whispered their secrets, carrying Amara's gratitude into the winds. I walked back to the cabin, the weight of the past few days replaced with a sense of closure. The family had gathered for breakfast, and as I joined them, I couldn't help but smile. The beach that had once been a source of fear and unease was now a place of understanding and peace, and as the sun rose higher in the sky, its warm rays washing over the shoreline, I knew that the memories of this summer would forever be intertwined with the story of Amara, a lost soul who had found her way home.